Hi, everybody. So, welcome to week two of the community health class. And this week, I figured since you've already seen me and you know what I'm like, I am just going to do a recording of my voice. In this way, no matter what you're doing, you can listen to me talking and I can make sure that everything's really clear. So, if you aren't watching me, you still have a good idea of what I'm talking about. So this week we're going to be tying in how the school and the community influence each other and overall impact public health. So you're probably already thinking that the connection's pretty clear. I mean, you send your kids or people who have been sent to school and they're there pretty much all day. It's a place for them to learn. It's a place for them to possibly participate in sports. It's a place for them to be a part of community, hobbies, make friends. It's a huge influencer of their mental state and their abilities. So the school definitely does have a really big impact on health. So we're going to kind of dive into that. And this whole week, we're going to be talking about just how deep that influence goes. So the school and children's health. So of course you want your children and the community's children to live in a very healthy environment and spend a lot of their time in a school that supports them to be healthy. So the important thing to realize here is that the school influences the community's health, and the community also influences the health of those who are at the school. Okay, so it's kind of this give and take relationship. So what I wanted to introduce this week is something called the whole school, whole community, whole child model. And this is often called the WSCC model. And really what this model is focused on is addressing the educational and health needs of children while they are at school. And as a result, the community really can play an important role in making sure that, they're sending their children who are healthy and eager to learn to the school, but also it can be a reflection of what the community is like. Okay, so for example, if schools are pushed to meet community expectations, you have parents who are extremely involved, and you have certain expectations that they want to see as outcomes from your school, you're going to be pressured, and the school as a whole should be able to rise up and meet those expectations, and they may even get additional resources to do so. Now, if you're working with a community in need, or a community that maybe has certain areas that need support, then that can be reflected by the student's success in the school. So what I mean by that is that when communities in need, often maybe, they're juggling support between several parents. Maybe students don't have a very stable lifestyle at home. Maybe they don't have dinners every night. Maybe they don't have somebody to talk to when they're upset. So all of these things come into play, and the school then, their performance outcomes, how the children do, are greatly impacted by the community that they come from. So this whole school, whole community, whole child model is focused on both educational and health needs of the children while at school, and you just have to realize that they both play an important role. So the goal is to have a healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged environment. And communities work together to provide this very systematic, it's very integrated and collaborative approach to make sure that their children get there. So this is a picture of the model. And for those of you who are familiar with SHAPE, this is actually a community of individuals who have come together of teachers, health professionals to make sure that the health of students is challenged, supported, engaged, safe, and overall, they're really successful in life. So this is actually showing you the community on the outside. So you see how the community is kind of that overarching theme. And then in the middle, you see the student. And obviously the goal is to have all 5 of these components working at once. In blue, you see all the different elements, the main elements that come into play when you have a student who is being affected, and you see here like their physical environment. Of course, that's going to have a huge impact on their health. Social and emotional climate, huge impact. Who they have to talk to, their counseling, psychology, social services. Of course, health services are a big deal. Everything from, having a cavity to not having anywhere to go when they don't feel good and missing school. Nutrition, environment services, physical education and physical activity, health education in general, just understanding health, understanding how to maintain their health, the community being involved and supportive of that health. Family engagement is huge. Sometimes you don't have that, and students really struggle without their family involved. And then employee wellness. Okay, so employee wellness plays a big role because you want the employees of the school to be very happy and healthy, to be able to help those who need them. So all of these things come into play when you're coordinating your processing policy and you're actually practicing policy to make sure students are healthy. Okay, and that should all lead to that improved learning and improved health. Right, so how do you get started on actually improving the learning and health outcomes of students? So if you're in a role to play this leadership advisory council that will really help the health, sometimes called a school wellness council. What you are doing is you're part of this group that's planning and implementing a school health program. Okay, and obviously the goal, going back to that picture that we just looked at, is improving health and learning outcomes. So what does this advisory council consist of? All right, so of course you'll have district administrators, parents, students, community representatives. You kind of want a little bit of everything, a little bit of everyone who's actually impacted by what you are going to try to put into place, what policies you are going to try to create. And going back to this picture, you want somebody from each one of these zones. So you can't maintain the health of your students if you're not working with somebody in the cafeteria, right? I know we have physical education teachers right in this class. They're vital. Health education, right? That may be a nurse, that may be an actual health educator. Community involvement. I mean, this could be anything from the local government down to people just who are really strong advocates. Family, of course, the employees, physical environment. So I think of how Buffalo even has different forms of transportation for people to get to places that are safe to be active, or they have bike paths put in place in many of the roads downtown, which has helped individuals to be safe and active. So that's just one example. And then social and emotional climate, excuse me. So you want to make sure that they feel supported, that it's a positive environment. And then of course, mental health is huge. So you want to make sure that they have a safe place to talk and they have support in that way too. So who is this leader on your advisory council for health? Ideally, it's somebody who's really familiar with planning, implementing and evaluating, and they also have a familiarity with the community, and they also have connections. Okay, this usually ends up the best person being someone like the school nurse. Okay, now thinking about the school nurse, they're in a great leadership position. Okay, they have the medical knowledge, they have very formal training in health education. They, of course, understand the health needs from pre-K to 12th grade, everything along that spectrum. And as far as the responsibilities of a nurse on a school team, just in general, they develop individualized healthcare plans. They're very familiar with all the different plans depending on the type of individual that they're servicing. As far as infectious diseases, they're responsible for relaying that information, making sure and scanning and making sure that nobody has a certain infectious disease. They provide care for those with medical necessities. So any individual who maybe has a feeding tube or a catheter, they can go to the school nurse to receive that extra support and maintain their health. They conduct physical assessments, so whether it be, prior to a sport season, maybe they're conducting physical assessments that way, or there was an outbreak and they want to make sure that everybody's safe. And they also maintain everybody's records. So they are responsible for keeping a very organized, kind of like a virtual record keeping system. Hopefully at this point it's not just paper. And this makes it very easy for them to be the ones who are going through and evaluating if the health of individuals have changed. For example, it could be the obesity rate, or something like that. And of course, they're on the team to support decreased absenteeism. So depending on what type of school you're in or the type of area it's in, absenteeism can be a really big problem. It might be that family isn't there to support the child. It may be something like their actual health is preventing them from coming. It could be, mental or physical. So they're part of that team. So is it realistic to expect the school nurse to take on this responsibility? They're in a great position, but do schools have the resources? They may not have the money to hire a full-time nurse in order to take on these responsibilities, or their full-time nurse might be so inundated with other responsibilities that they can't take on the health education specialist role as well. So some schools do contract with a nurse, maybe a local health department nurse from an outside health agency, and then maybe they're part-time only when they're needed, and it leaves a little bit more room for them to hire somebody on as a health education specialist who could maybe serve as a nurse if needed, but their main job is to really serve as this leader for health in the entire building. So what about the teachers? So teachers are, of course, extremely important, and I think they see the students much more than sometimes even their parents do on a daily basis. They observe, they're a huge influencer, and they can kind of look around and notice if anything is abnormal versus normal. It's much easier for them to see trends in a group of individuals. And they may have training in the model that we've looked at, that whole school, whole community, whole child. They may have gone through that in school in their graduate studies. So they're really great for that leadership role. So as far as health education standards, so what does it take in order to be a leader on this whole school, whole community, whole child model? You really have to understand the content. You really have to be familiar with planning, and you have to be an expert in implementation. And that's where I'm going to leave it as far as this lecture, because I'm actually going to provide you a link that's right to Shape America, and you're going to look at all the different ways that health education standards lay out.